Okay, welcome to Module 9, everyone. So last week we focused on creating or writing an argument which was directed to three different audiences. And of course, the whole purpose was for you to see that when you even give the same message to a different audience, you have to change how you present that message. You got to change your tone, your word choice, your language choice, the level of evidence that you are going to include or not, based on the needs and the understanding of that audience. And what you're going to find over the next several units or modules in this course is that you're going to end up applying that in a different way. So you're going to end up writing a piece that's for new media or in a new media format. You're going to end up writing in traditional media. So you're going to end up formatting and changing the way that you present this information based on the type of media that you're using, which is an important skill to have. But before we even get kind of launch or move over into actually creating those different kinds of media, the creators of this course want you to take some time and reflect on where you actually sit within the information ecosystem, not just as a consumer of information, which is basically what has been discussed up to this point, but as a creator of it. And they also are trying to establish some context or get you to understand some context about how social media and the current information ecosystem really affects authority. So I want you to envision this with me. Let's say that I was trying to diagram the power structures within my own life, or the social hierarchies or the authoritative hierarchies within my life, okay? And so if I were doing that on a piece of paper, I might start with something like my name in the middle, and then I would put above me my boss, or I actually have two that are immediately above me, and then those two report to the dean, who is above them, and it goes up the chain, through the vice president and to the president of the college and so forth. And then I also might try and figure out, well, who's on the same playing field as me, at the same level as me? Well, it would be other faculty members. They're all on the same level as I am in terms of the organizational hierarchy. And is there anyone that's below me on this hierarchy? I mean, we might be able to say that there are some faculty members that I mentor, that I help them out with things. And so maybe, even though they're faculty, maybe we could say that there's a little bit of a power dynamic where I'm a little bit above them because I do give them tasks to do and tell them I need you to complete certain tasks for me by this time and everything. So even though we're on the same level, in some way we're not. But then maybe you would go, okay, well, who would be like below me in the chain of authority or power? And that would, most people would probably say something like the students, right? Because as the instructor, I am the one who determines what your grade is going to be. I'm going to determine whether something that you submit is acceptable or not, and so there's a little bit of kind of some power there, so to speak. So what we have here then is a very vertical, top to bottom sort of power structure. And of course, if we were to throw in things like family as well, my wife is on the same level as me because it's a mutual relationship in which we support each other. She sometimes tries to get up here and I have to go, no, we're doing this together, right? And then, my daughter, when she was younger, she would have been underneath us, but she's an adult now, so she's on par. When I was younger, my parents had more authority than me, so they were above me, but that hasn't been true for some time. So you could apply this sort of thing to your own life, and you would have a very vertical, with some horizontal spread, of people who are on the same level as you. But there would be a vertical power structure if you were thinking about where you stand in terms of the power relationships of your work or your own family. So I want you then to think about how that would change if we were to democratize authority. And I'm choosing that phrase with a specific purpose because it's part of Module 9, democratize authority. So if we were to try and define authority, you would probably say something like, well, it's someone who is an authority figure is one who is in a position of power over someone else. Or authority itself means having power over someone or something. Okay. And then what about democratize? And you might say something, well, the root word of democratize is democracy, and you're right. And so if we're talking about democratizing authority, then we're talking about having authority within a democratic sort of system or a democratic paradigm. So what happens in my top to bottom sort of vertical power dynamic if I were to democratize, or if the world were to democratize all of that authority? I would still be in the middle here, and maybe my bosses who are above me would come down and be on the same level as me, right? And maybe even their bosses. And then the students down below me, and maybe some of those other faculty members who are a little bit below me on the chain, so to speak, come up, and we're all basically on the same level. Now, how does that change the entire dynamic between all of those stakeholders, all those people that are involved? You might say some things like, well, now it gives some people more freedom, because instead of being in a position where they have to do what they're told to do by someone that's above them, now they're on the same level, and their opinions and their approaches are of equal value. So there's more freedom, more equality. So maybe there's some good things that come as a result of that sort of shift. You might think of as people having more freedom and more equality, even in the sense of a family structure or in the sense of work structure, being of a net positive, something that's overall a good thing. But there's definitely cons to it as well. So what are some of the negatives that could result from this power shift, from democratizing the authority? Well, if everyone's on the same level, and everyone has the same voice of equal value, it can really be hard to get things done. Right? Maybe everyone has different opinions, and so we can't agree, and therefore we can't proceed. Or maybe people who have similar opinions fracture. They break off into a group, and another group of people forms or breaks off into another group. And now we have conflicts of people of equal standing, and we somehow have to resolve these conflicts amongst these people. It might even change how communication happens, right? I mean, communication can be good or bad in a top-down sort of structure for sure. But communication where everyone's on the same level can become much more garbled and messy, because you don't have one person who says, this is the decision, now go and do, and then those people go and do. Instead, we have everyone that's vying to be heard, everyone who's fighting to, or pushing, applying pressure at least to be heard and to have their ideas be taken up. As someone might say that, well, there's too many leaders and not enough followers in that situation, or you can even reverse it. You could say that there's too many leaders, not enough followers, or you could say, well, there's everyone that is actually following their own thing, and so it's not cohesive, and so there can be some issues. So why am I asking you to consider this? Because in the text that you're going to read, you're going to see read about how, and I'm trying to share my screen at the same time. Is it this one? Yeah. Okay. You're going to read about one person's take on how social media sits within the information ecosystem as a format for democratizing authority. So here in Module 9, in the module introduction, it points out that we're essentially a little over halfway through the course. We're still interested in analyzing the information ecosystem, but up to now, our place has been as consumers of information and content, and now we're going to look at our role as creators of it. And as a creator of content in the world now, you have a lot of options that you didn't have before, right? The authority for information, or rather the flow of information control, used to be very top down. People in power, whether they were politicians or magazine editors or newspaper editors, decided what was said and put it out there. And with things like the internet and with social media, now everyone who has access, that is, everyone who has access to the internet or social media, can put their voice out there to be heard as well. And so that is a move which democratizes authority. You have people who were transmitting information who could control that information, and now that was a select group, and now it's much more democratized because now anyone can put that information out there. When you look at your journal entry, you're going to see that there's this reading here that you're going to take a look at called Millennials' Voices, Social Media and the Democratization of Authority by Matt Hammer from 2018. And Hammer really talks about that in this article, how social media has not only fulfilled a destiny, but allows for the democratization of authority even though it has formidable pitfalls. So even though there are negative things about social media, it has kind of fulfilled a certain destiny that democratizes authority. So if you look at the first sentence here, since the bulk of our society began adopting the internet in the 1990s, it has been anticipated as being the most influential innovation to the democratization of authority since the printing press. You may not agree with that entirely, but you probably are willing to at least concede that that is mostly true. You know, the printing press made it possible for many other people to print text and distribute those texts. And so it changed the power dynamic in which only certain authority figures could present text or create text that would be disseminated. And it made it so that, well, now a lot of people can do so. And so the authority of language and the authority that comes through writing and text and communicating information in that way became more spread out, more democratized. And then he says, through such an evolution, and what his point is that by adopting the internet in the 1990s, that happened again. But this time it was even bigger, so that because the internet's more widespread, and he thinks that it was the most influential innovation to the democratization of authority since the printing press. Through such an evolution, it was predicted to bring with it a profound shift from that of vertical to horizontal authority. And that was what I was just describing to you, right? That relationship where there's this top-down formal power structure where there's people at the top and the power flows downward towards the people at the bottom. Now with the internet, according to Hammer, that becomes more of a horizontal relationship where people are now more on an even setting, and they can share authority through the written word. And because of the nature of the internet and videos and audio, the spoken word as well. And it is now a more horizontal relationship. And so the main focus of this article will be how social media has not only fulfilled this destiny, but also allows for this democratization of authority, even when considering its formidable pitfalls. So on net balance, it's a good thing, according to him. So your task, and what I recommend that you do first, is go ahead and read this article carefully, and you probably want to read it 2 times at least, maybe even 3. I recommend that you take a few notes, either on your notebook or in your document, in which you write down what you think are the main ideas. So look in the paragraphs and figure out what's the main idea of this paragraph, jot those down, and then when you go back and look at your notes later, it'll help you kind of see the flow of the article. You might also want to notice that he does say that social media fulfills this destiny of being a democratizer of authority, but of being the most influential innovation that democratizes authority, but it also has pitfalls. So in other words, he's going to point out pros or good things about the democratization of authority through internet and social media, but he's also going to point out some cons or some negatives. So I would annotate not just for the main ideas, but also what are the benefits that he is ascribing to social media, and what are the detriments or the negative aspects of social media. And after you've read that and annotated for that twice, the chances are that you will have a pretty good idea of what this article is about and what his position is, at least, on this subject. Your task then, after you've done that, is to come back to, Module 9, and you're going to write your journal post in MLA style, of course, and you want to address these concepts. In what ways have social media changed the way people communicate with each other? So this comes from your personal knowledge and experience. You can pull something from the Hammer text as well, with authorities, with government officials, with celebrities. So how has social media changed the way that people communicate with each other? Again, be thinking about, does it actually move people from that vertical power structure to a more horizontal one? What effect do you think this access has on people? When they're talking about access, they mean access to these people up here. So how does having more access to government officials or celebrities through social media, how does that affect people? Good things, bad things? I mean, think about things like cancel culture even. Where would cancel culture be without social media? And we've seen that some people think that social media then presents opportunities to hold authority figures accountable for things when they previously weren't going to be held accountable. And other people see that there are instances where, under the guise of accountability, people's lives are just ruined. In what ways have social media changed the way we create and consume information? So how has it changed how we actually create and disseminate information and at the same time take it in? And then last, have you ever seen something that tricked you on social media? How did you discover it was a falsified story? I recommend that you, again, break your response into multiple paragraphs. I would do one paragraph per bullet point. And you need to have at least 250 words, and you should reference this week's reading. It should, of course, be in MLA style. You know that. Why does it not say that? Hey, you know what? I'm going to edit it right here. Right here. So you're going to write your paper on MLA style and include a works cited entry. An in-text citation in MLA style. Okay. So you're going to have an in-text, at least one in-text citation in MLA style from the source. So you got to find a way to relate the source to your answers to these questions. And you also need to have a works cited page with the works cited entry. And keep in mind the formatting there: author's last name, comma, author's first name, period, the title inside of quotes with the period, then the container in italics, followed by a comma, the year, a comma, and then the URL with the period at the end, and don't forget the hanging indent. Okay, so that's Module 9. If you have questions, you guys know how to reach out to me. Thanks.